We've got flags and banners, and if you mind your manners, we might even get to standards and what they represent. So just take my voice's hand and we'll both try to understand how this vexilla logic podcast could be flagged for content. Flagged for content.
What's up, Vexheads, and welcome to episode 22 of Flagged for Content. It's the only podcast that forced Kansas City to change its flag after one of our episodes. And really just a portion of one of our episodes. If you want to go back to episode 20 with Kyle Ayers, it's like the back third of that one. I think they heard us, and I think they changed it accordingly. So good on you, Kansas City. Thanks for listening. It's also a Flags for Good podcast, which you can see on the flag here behind me. And Flags for Good is a great flag company that only makes flags that they believe in, and they've been nice enough to sponsor us, which helps out a ton. As well as if you want to get in touch with us, with the show, our email is podcast@flagsforgood.com. So that's probably the easiest, most straightforward way to get in touch with the show. But obviously, hit me up on social media if you want to do it that way too. Let's see, what else? Our Instagram winner this week for Fresh Flags, which I know I've only been doing like once a week at this point. I'm trying to get back into the swing of doing it 3-4 times a week. But, things come up, things happen. Oh, see, things come up, things fall as well. For the listeners, the Flags for Good flag is falling behind me. Anyway, the winner of Fresh Flags this week, who gets a shout out on the show, was, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, Kiosis80. That is at CAIOSUS80. So Kiosis80, hope I'm pronouncing it right, but congrats. You always do well, but this is the first time you got it first. And I think you just beat second place by seconds, like mere seconds. I was actually watching it as they came in, which I don't usually do. So congrats. Anyway, wanted to mention the TikTok that we have. That is at flagged4, the number 4 content. I'm going to be putting up some pretty cool stuff here in the coming days about flag evolutions, how flags changed. Try and do some cool effects on those. I'm still trying to figure out what the Gen Zers do and not do. I've been called out for like millennial pause and all these other things that I had to look up. So makes me feel old, but go follow it anyway. Wanted to shout out Flag Session because Joey B, our guest today, Joey B the flag guy, is not technically part of Flag Session, but he does do a podcast with them, a Kiwi, 2 Brits, and a Yank, and they have been doing underrated and overrated flag episodes, which is where I got a little bit of the idea for the first part of this one, when Joey and I touch on our overrated and underrated briefly. So thanks, Flag Session. That's a great idea. Sorry to cop it. Not that sorry. And, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I wanted to... one thing I had on my notes was to tease out our next guest, which is going to be Eric Neistel from Utah Vexillology. He is part of the committee that is helped, I don't know what tense to use at this point, depends when this comes out, with the new Utah flag. So yeah, the new Utah flag is... everybody's talking about it. It's got the Vex community buzzing. If you don't know about it, go look it up. But Eric Neistel is going to be our guest next week, and we are going to talk all things Utah, all things that new flag and flag design, and, kind of spin off from there. So definitely tune in for that one. And I think that's all I had up top this week. We had, as I mentioned, Joey B, the flag guy, Joe Billips, as our guest this week, and we got into some really fun stuff. I finally had like a quiz ready for somebody. I think that's a feature that I'm going to keep doing in most of these episodes. Let me know if you like it, if you don't like it, what you would change, anything like that. Like I said, social media DMs are open and our email is open, as I mentioned. So anyway, without any further ado than I've already done, let's go ahead and get into this episode and talk to Joey B, the flag guy. Ladies, gentlemen, everyone else, we have an amazing guest for you this week. You know him as the Yank from A Kiwi, Two Brits, and a Yank Talk Flags, the podcast. You know him as the perpetual runner-up in Flag Sessions flag redesign competitions. And you know him as always having a beer in hand for those podcasts. It's Joey B, the flag guy!
What's up?
What's up, Joey? How's it going, man?
It's going pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing well. And just to touch on that third point that I mentioned there, what is the beer that you have in your hand today?
I am drinking a IPA by Other Half. It is called Double Citra Daydream. It's one of my favorites that they have. I always happen to have an Other Half in my hand during the podcast, and this happens to be the one that I have today.
Oof, that sounds really good. Would you say Double Citra IPA?
Double Citra Daydream.
Double Citra
I have the
Daydream.
can here because I poured it right before I sat down. But Double Citra Daydream. I call them the cloud beers because they're daydream.
Yes.
Their daydreams have the cloud labels on them, and they have oats in them, and the oats make it very pillowy. That's the best way I can think of to describe it. And it's just it's luxurious. I think it's absolutely luxurious, and I'm spoiled for most other IPAs because of Other Half. So.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. I always see your posts like on Instagram and everywhere else with Other Half. Yeah. And it's like you watching something that I want to watch usually and drinking a beer that I want to drink usually. And I'm super jealous. I'm going to have to try Other Half.
Yeah, I can thank my neighbor because I'd never heard of them. At the time, they were, I think, exclusively in New York when I first heard of them. And he goes up there because his wife is from the Finger Lakes area. He brought some back. I had one and I was in love. I couldn't get them here for the longest time, but now they do mail order.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's clutch.
I think they do to Tennessee as well. Remind me to look.
I absolutely will remind you. That is not a problem. We will discuss this off air afterwards. Anyway, we will get to know Joey a little bit more in a minute, but first, just a preview of what we are going to go over today. So Joey and I are going to do a little brief rundown of flags that we think are both over and underrated. Then we are going to get into the kind of the bulk of the show, which is kind of almost a throwback to how the show started, like my early episodes, where we're going to talk about some flags. We're going to do some not too deep dives on them, but we're going to go into the design, the history, a little bit of that, of 3 different flags that are very related, at least in geographically anyway. And Joey doesn't know it yet. Well, he does now, but we're going to close out on a quiz on his favorite flag. And so Joey, as a true fan of yours, / a guy who asked you a direct question like 3 days ago, I know what your favorite flag is, but the listeners may not. So, Joey, let's get to know you and let's get to know what is your favorite flag.
Sure. My favorite flag is the Betsy Ross Flag. And as I mentioned to Dave and Tracy a long time ago, said it's the flag that got me interested in flags when I was a little kid.
Okay. Interesting. So, yeah, we'll have I hope you know a lot about it because we're going to do a little bit of...
I can't say that I necessarily do if you're looking for a lot of details about it, but we'll see how much I know.
Hey, I'm more looking to have a good time and stump you with some questions than I am for that. So.
Well, hey, I have a prop. So this is the Betsy Ross blanket that my mom gave me when I was 4.
Okay.
And this is the reason I got into the Betsy Ross flag. I've kept this quilt ever since my parents passed away. It's, the flag on one side, and if you reverse it, all the colors are reversed. So it's a white field with blue stars, and the red and white stripes are reversed. And as I mentioned before, I tend to like the Betsy Ross flags that have all the stars pointed upward. Right. And I believe it comes from this quilt because they all point upward in it.
Right. So that's where your predilection toward like that version of that flag comes from anyway.
Yes.
You grew up on it.
I grew up on it, and I also suspect it's why I'm like mildly obsessed with flags that they're the same design, but the colors are flipped, like Iceland and Norway. Both red, white, and blue, both the fimbriated Nordic Cross, but the red and the blue are swapped. And with this blanket, the red, the red and the blue and white are swapped on opposite sides. So that's my theory behind why I like those types of flags and why I love the Betsy Ross flag. But
I mean, I think it's a good theory. I know your podcast mate Terith is a huge fan of Norway's flag.
Mm-hmm.
I am a huge fan of any flag with a Nordic cross on it. You name them, not just the national ones, but also the kind of smaller ones like Faroe Islands and Åland Islands, things like that. So yeah, I definitely get that.
I am actually waiting for the occasion to have 4 Nordic flags behind me on my backdrop. I haven't done it yet.
Ooh, I wish that my first episode wasn't on that, because I would do another one just to have that be the case. Honestly, I did do a little thing as an aside for World Vexillology Day last October, where I had like all the Nordic Cross flags hanging out on my back deck here. Did like a whole video for it and everything. Could have done it better, you live and you learn, but next year we'll see what happens. I do love those flags though.
No, they're great. I've seen 2 in their native countries in person, and I really want to see the other 3.
I have not been to any of those countries, which was actually a sticking point on my first episode. Was my guest asked me, like, Andy, do you have any of these flags? And I was like, well, at that point anyway, I only had flags of places that I had been to. I've since kind of, I tell myself it's for the show anyway. I have bought a lot more flags for countries that I haven't been to. And yeah, those are all on that list. Need to get up there at some point, but hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, if I only had flags from countries I've been to, I would only have 10 flags. So.
Yeah, I had maybe 15 or 20, I don't know. But like I would also get like smaller subnational and like regional ones, If I already had like the French flag, I'd get the one for Lorraine or whatever, wherever I was. In any case, so that is your favorite flag. So what is an overrated flag that you'd like to talk about today?
All right. I won't talk about the one that I talked about on the K2BY podcast. So it was actually hard for me to pick an overrated flag because there were more that I thought were very underrated.
Sure.
As far as overrated goes, there were 3 that stuck out in my mind. One I talked about on the other podcast. One is actually right behind me, and I'm sure I'm going to be in the minority on this one for your listeners, but South Africa to me is a flag that I think is overrated, whereas Vanuatu, which is a very similar design, is the one I'm going to choose for underrated. And I've got them side by side for that very reason. Yeah, spoiler. It's not that South Africa is necessarily a bad flag, and I said the same thing about Italy in the other podcast, so that was my overrated flag for that one. It's not that I think it's a bad flag. I think South Africa's flag gets a lot of hoopla considering the flag that came before it. A, it was incredibly ugly, and B, it represented something even uglier. So South Africa, threw off apartheid, designed this flag. As I understand it, this wasn't even going to be the final flag, but it just happened to become the final flag, which is fine. But for me, it's got a lot going on, not in terms of the pattern, because that has a very similar pattern to Vanuatu, but surprisingly in terms of the colors. It's got the 6 colors, and it seems a little haphazard to me. So again, not to piss anybody off, I'm sure I will, but it's not one of my favorites because to me, it's just a little too haphazard. And I think if you eliminated 1 or 2 of the colors and reorganized them a little bit, it would be a lot more elegant and streamlined.
Yeah, no argument here, because the flag that I picked for my overrated flag was South Africa.
That's awesome.
And for the listeners, we did not coordinate that.
No,
and perhaps we should have, because we, probably could have extended this bit for a little bit more. But no, I picked it for, honestly, like, you enumerated most of the reasons. Like, yes, it was better than what came before it. Yes, it's it doesn't technically break any design rules. Things are fimbriated where they should be by, gold and silver, yellow and white. And yet I find myself coming to the same conclusion that you did, that it's trying to do, I think you didn't say it exactly this way, but it's trying to do too much at once, I think, for me. And it gets a little bit busy. I think we could simplify it. We could, I don't know. I don't have any necessarily like design notes for it. Like I would do this and this exactly, but it's just like a little too much for me. And as you said, the reason we both put it as overrated is because it is fairly highly rated in the Vex community.
Yeah, I suspect if South Africa hadn't been such a dreadful place prior to the inception of this flag, I don't know that it would necessarily have gotten the recognition that it has. I think it would have just been one of those flags that just happens to be out there.
Yep, absolutely. So so that is, I guess, both of our overrated.
Well, I can chat for you a second on Italy if you'd like. For my
sure, yeah. I was going to say like the reason that I even like kind of asked Joey these questions for the listener is because his podcast, along with the two Brits and a Kiwi, a Yank, two Brits, no, a Kiwi, two Brits, and a Yank. I always get that backwards. I did a last show too. A Kiwi, two Brits, and a Yank. You guys had an episode on overrated flags. You're coming out with an episode on underrated flags, which may be out by the time this drops. And Italy was yours for that. So yeah, you wanted to kind of speak on that.
Sure. And again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with Italy. It's actually a very good flag. But I think I have a rather unique perspective on it because where I live in Pennsylvania, you see 3 or 4 national flags predominantly. The U.S. flag, of course. Mm-hmm. The flag of Ireland, especially around St. Patrick's Day, because everyone's Irish for a day. Mm-hmm. But I see Italy because we have a lot of Americans of Italian descent in this area, and I see the flag of Mexico because we have a lot of people who immigrated from Mexico that live in this area. If you look at Mexico and Italy side by side, they are very similar in design, the tri-band red, green, and gold, or excuse me, red, green, and white. But seeing them fly and seeing the coat of arms of Mexico in that flag and seeing Italy without, I prefer Mexico over Italy for that reason. I just think it gives the flag something that it's otherwise missing. France doesn't have the coat of arms in the middle, and it doesn't need it. I don't know if it's the blue over the green, but like France stands alone as is just fine. Italy needs something else, and Mexico has that something else. And Mexico also has a slightly darker shade of green, which I prefer against the red or near the red versus what Italy has. And again, it's a fine flag, but I think it's a little overrated.
No, I agree. It also has like a slightly darker shade of red, if memory serves. Anyway, I've got them both on the bunting here, which is why I'm looking for the viewers. But I do agree definitely with the shade of green, the coat of arms in the middle. Yeah, I think they basically took an idea and did it better. That's not how they would look at it exactly, but yeah.
Any of my friends of Italian descent who are watching this are going to like throw rocks at me.
Oh, sure. Mine too. In any case, we've gone to our overrateds. What is a flag that you think is underrated? Not to step on your own podcast toes.
Sure. So I won't talk about the flag that I'm going to talk about for that.
Right.
So obviously the flag I'm going to talk about is behind me on the other side, Vanuatu. To me, the design is similar, and I'm going to be moving back and forth so you can compare them. So sorry about that. It's similar to South Africa in the way it's set up, but it uses fewer colors and it uses them better, in my opinion, because like, if you look at the fimbriation, it's much cleaner. It's much more elegant. It's very sleek. It's one of those flags that uses the Pan-African colors better than a lot of the African flags themselves, I think. And I think Tracy put this perfectly in the last podcast that the flags of Oceania are often overlooked, unless it's New Zealand or Australia. Nobody looks at the Vanuatus, the Tuvalus, which is over here, Fijis, you name it. And I think Vanuatu is a gem hidden in that geographic region that most people don't know about, but should. I think this is one of the best national flags.
I think so too. Well, I don't know if I think that it's one of the best national flags, but I do think that it definitely does what South Africa is trying to do in a better way. I like the kind of, instead of using the yellow/gold as a fimbriation, they have it as a major design element and then fimbriate that in black, and just have like other than that, they have the red and the green, as you can see behind Joey if you're a viewer. It's much more simple and clean, I guess, is like a good way to put it. And as you said, yeah, I think the flags of Oceania are slept on a lot. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I'm sorry. And to be fair, some of them are not attractive, but there are some, and there are enough that are where they should get a second look from people.
They're just not well known enough, I think. In maybe some part because they are overwhelmingly like smaller island nations or, conglomerates of islands and things like that, whatever. But if I could move on to mine, just because it touches on that, my underrated is the flag of the Marshall Islands, which I think is an incredible flag. I've got it on the bunting up here. I'm not going to move the camera to make everyone seasick or whatever, but to me, it's kind of a similar case of what you're talking about, where like Oceanian flags are just underrated and overlooked and everything. But it's a gorgeous flag. It's a dark blue field with an orange and white stripe. They get bigger as they go from the hoist to the fly. It's not too much for me in the middle. And then it's got a star. I don't know how many points this star has. It's more like a sun almost. I could probably count them, but I'm not going to. It seems like 20 or so up in what you would call the canton, I guess, or at least that area, because this flag doesn't necessarily have like a union or whatever. But I just think that color combination of, I know you're not a huge, you talked on your overrated one about, or no, maybe it was Tareth that brought this up. I think it was Tareth that brought up like, well, do you think there's a reason that yellow and orange aren't typically used?
That was Tareth, yeah.
Yeah, because they're bad color combinations. And yes, maybe yellow and orange, but I think the orange, which was the main, yellow's used everywhere in flags, orange is not. I think the orange on the Marshall Islands flag kills it. And like that with the white and then the white sun / star in the canton, like I really like this flag.
Would it surprise you to know that I very nearly put the Marshall Islands up behind me today where Tuvalu is?
It wouldn't.
I had it up in the last podcast and I was going to put it up again, but I was trying to like alter the colors so that they were, all distinct from each other. And I thought that the blue might be a little too similar to what you see in South Africa. So I switched it out for Tuvalu.
Yeah.
But now I wish I put it in.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. It's one of the few, I own New Zealand and Marshall Island. I think those might be the only two like full-size Oceanian flags that I own. I do really like Vanuatu, though. That was a good choice on your part. I got that just for this podcast. Oh, really?
Okay. Well, I wanted it anyway, but I finally got an excuse to buy it because I've been wanting it for a while. One other thing about Vanuatu, the Y-shaped fimbriation, it mirrors the shape of the archipelago. So that's one of the reasons it has that particular design. So I think that's another reason I love it, because there is distinct meaning behind it as opposed to South Africa. But getting back to your flag of the Marshall Islands, what I love about that flag, and I'm showing my geekiness here, and I wish I had my Star Wars shirt on for this, the orange and white beam, as I'm going to call it, it just reminds me of the Death Star beam blowing up Alderaan. And I love that flag. And it looks like, boom, Alderaan blowing up in the corner. And I guess it's kind of morbid, but it reminds me of Star Wars. So I love that flag.
Yeah, no, I could see it. Anything that reminds me of Star Wars is welcome. So, yeah, anyway. So those are our overrated, our underrated, Joey's favorite flag. And let's go ahead and get into the bulk of the show here. I have got 3 flags for you that we're going to talk about. And, I'm not going to call these deep dives. They're medium depth dives, I guess, probably. Or maybe even on the shallow end. But the first one I am going to explain to you in the, Vex design terms. And you tell me what that flag is, and then we'll go over it.
Is it so let me ask you before you start. Sure. Is it a national flag, a state flag?
These are all 3 going to be national flags.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. Yeah, no, that is an important question because like Tracy and Dave gave me some nonsense from Russia that I was not prepared for. Although I got one of them. I got one of them. It wasn't even Volchance because they knew I'd probably get that one. I got one and missed the other, but anyway. All right, so the first flag that we are going to talk about today is, all right, the design notes state thusly: a horizontal triband of blue, black, and white. The end.
That's Estonia.
That is, in fact, Estonia!
That's one of my favorite flags. And I got to see that one in Tallinn when I visited Estonia quite a few years ago. And it's
lucky.
It's absolutely stunning to see flying in person.
I was going to say I bet, but I know that firsthand because I actually own this flag. Right here. Had it kind of handy. Yep. And yeah, more or less that's what it looks like. I know you're getting a zoomed in version if you're a viewer, but it is blue on top, black in the middle, white on bottom. What were you saying?
It's a gorgeous flag, and I love that shade of blue.
I love that shade of blue as well. Yeah. I really like this one. I think maybe more than I normally like horizontal tribands. And it doesn't even necessarily follow all the rules, although you could argue that it does because black is something that like heraldists are kind of wishy-washy on. But I don't know. It really speaks to me. Like, you clearly have thoughts on it. So you have a shirt that has this flag on it, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did. And I almost wore that today because I was, again, I was like looking in the camera and trying out different colors to see what was going to like not make me blend in with the flags and what would kind of stand out. So that's why I've got this black Pac-Man shirt on.
Yeah.
But one of my alternates was a shirt, a very, very dark blue that has the Estonian flag on it and says Republic of Estonia. So it's funny that you picked that one. But yes, I do love that flag. I love the specific shade of blue, which I think is unique in the flag world, at least as far as the national flags go. I haven't seen that specific shade anywhere else. And I love that it mirrors the Estonian landscape in winter. You can probably Google it and find some pictures of the Estonian landscape where you've got the snow on the ground, then you've got the birch trees off in the distance that look black because they are so far in the distance than the clear blue sky. And I just think it's cool that it's one of the countries that its landscape mirrors its flag.
Yeah, and like to that end, have you seen? See, I just sent an image of it to you, even though you don't need it because you know what it looks like. But there's a picture. I think it's on Wikipedia if I could find it. Yeah, there it is. Exactly like you said. It mirrors the blue sky up top, like the black of the trees in the middle, and then fog kind of over like beautiful like winter scene at the bottom. Mm-hmm. And honestly, a lot of the symbolism kind of harkens back to pretty much that. Like, do you know any amount of the symbolism on this one?
I do, and perhaps you should tune into a future K2BY podcast and find out, because it might be my underrated flag that I'm going to talk about.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I will go into... not to spoil that, but I will go into a little bit of it. But basically let's see, where did I have it? The blue is supposed to be for the vaulted blue sky above the native land. The black is for the attachment to the soil of the homeland, as well as the fate of Estonians, which was for centuries black with worries, which that part's kind of dark, literally and figuratively. And the white is for purity, hard work, and commitment. And
so when I talk about that flag in the future, I will touch on that dark history part, because the people of the Baltics have for centuries gone through a lot with, invading forces on either side, taking over their countries, killing their people. And it was, especially egregious in World War II when you had the Soviets, then the Nazis, then the Soviets again, for half a century. So I will touch on that. And I had a personal experience in Tallinn that gave me even more love and respect for the flag than I had before.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, World War II, as you mentioned, but also like World War I. At the end of that, when Russia was breaking up, was when Estonia formally gained independence in 1918, which is when they adopted this flag. So, and there's going to be a couple of those today.
Yeah.
No spoilers, probably spoilers. But yeah, this flag was adopted in 1918. I had the exact date. Okay, 21st of November of 1918. This was adopted because they had recently declared independence, and they said, okay, we need a flag. What's it going to be? And it was flown from the Pic Herman Tower of Tumpea Castle. I'm probably pronouncing all of that wrong.
No,
but
you're not.
Tumpea Castle is a historic, like, and cultural landmark there in, I think, in Tallinn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they had it up from 18? It was reconfirmed in 1922. And then, yes, like you said, the Soviet Union did invade and occupy them in 1940. And after 1940, it was banned.
Yep. Correct.
So, yeah, from 1940 until 1991, technically, although we'll go into, there's some, ins and outs of that. But this flag was banned in Estonia because the Soviet Union, largely countries that they moved into, they did not want flying any national symbols, anything that could give you some kind of idea, some kind of revolutionary or counter-revolutionary, however they looked at it, idea. And so, yeah, this flag would have had to have been kind of, I don't know, flown privately, not even flown probably at all, but like hung privately. And even then, you're at a great risk. Yeah, I would risk it in Soviet Estonia.
Yeah, so to your point, when the Russians took over Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania, they embarked on a campaign that's known today as Russification, where they would either kill outright or deport tens of thousands of the local population, put ethnic Russians in their place, with the goal of wiping out, in this case, the Estonian culture, the Estonian language, the Estonian identity. And part of that Russification was to forbid the flying or even the possession of the Estonian flag, and to even possess it was punishable by death. Mm-hmm. So if someone had it in their home, it would have been hidden.
Right. Yeah. At the bottom of a closet, the bottom of like a bunch of things, probably. Yeah, I personally probably wouldn't have risked it, but you never know.
Yeah, I believe if I get my pronunciation correct, it's called the Sini Mustvalga.
I mean, yeah, I think so. I don't know Estonian or Finnish or like any Finno-Ugric languages really at all, but that's what the spelling looks like to me. Which the Volga part seems, I don't know, it seems like German-esque or something. Like it almost seems like flag, but with like, anyway, we're not going to go to the language, but the Sini Mustvalga literally means blue, black, white. So I guess probably not what I'm thinking. But yeah, that was interesting to me that that it was banned for all those years, but people obviously kept it up. There's still the original version of it is still kept from like a student union, Estonian Student Society from 1881, which was the first version of it that they had. They still possess that. It did not get destroyed in the wars, unlike so many things. And yeah, this one is very cool to me. It seems weirdly that the Germans were a little bit more tolerant of it than the Soviets. And I say weirdly, maybe it's not that weird when you consider everything.
Well, if you look at the objectives of each one of those entities when they were an invading force, when the Nazis invaded, they unfortunately, unleashed the Holocaust on the Jewish population in those three countries, the Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. They were less concerned about the ethnic identities of the ethnic Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians. The Soviets wanted to wipe out that identity completely and have them essentially be an extension of Russia.
Right. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I know the Nazis were also looking to recruit, basically. So if we're nice to you kind of thing, then maybe you come fight for us type thing. So I don't know. There might have been a little bit of that involved in that.
Yeah, and for the record, I know very few words in Estonian. One of them happens to be the flag. I can say, cheers and thank you, and that's pretty much about it.
Fair enough. Well, you know more than me then. I don't know any. I say I don't know any Finno-Ugric languages, but I did actually learn a little bit of Hungarian when I was there, but that's for another day. It was pretty much like how to order a drink and say thank you.
That's my extension of Finnish as well.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's the Estonian flag. The next one that I'm going to send you, I would love for you to describe to the listeners, and I will put it here in the chat.
I've got my phone. All right, a horizontal triband in Pan-African colors, but is not a Pan-African flag. The colors are gold, green, and red going from top to bottom.
Yep, and I know the answer to this, but do you know what flag that is?
That's the flag of Lithuania.
That is indeed the flag of Lithuania, yes. So you can probably sense the theme that we're going on now.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is the flag of Lithuania. Do you know anything about this one off the top of your head?
It shares a similar history as far as its place in the occupation that the Estonian flag had. Again, to possess a Lithuanian flag was forbidden, punishable by death. It did not resurface really until the Soviets' grip on the Baltics and the rest of their constituent states was waning. Mm-hmm. Then you started to see a little bit more. I did know more at one point, but it's been so long since I've studied it that I couldn't tell you without making shit up, so I certainly won't do that.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, like you said, it's a vertical triband, just the same as the other one was. Or a horizontal triband, rather. Same as Estonia's, but yeah, like you said, it is yellow/gold, then green. It's kind of a darkish green, and then red. And this is Lithuania. This is their second kind of national flag, but it was adopted during the same year as Estonia's, which was 1918, when they threw off the Russian yoke temporarily and, kind of came into their own as a country. Interestingly, there were a lot of, designs and redesigns for this one, and they ended up settling on this kind of by, not like accident, but almost by, well, we don't like that, we don't like that, we don't like that kind of thing. So where are we going to land on this? Here. Not originally, but at a certain point during the flag design process, during those first years of independence, they had a red and green flag. It was just red and green, no yellow on it. And they decorated an entire room for it, for this, their version of the Senate or whatever was going to come in and vote. They decorated the whole room with it. And then they said, that looks really drab. This dark red and this dark green, they just kind of bring the whole vibe down, the whole mood down of the room. Can we add something a little bit brighter to it? And at that point, they settled on, well, we could put a yellow band in the middle, which, if you notice, is not where they ended up putting it. But we could put a yellow band in the middle to kind of liven things up a little bit. And at a certain point, they settled on putting the yellow on top for reasons I'll go into in a minute. But the other thing that strikes me is if they had just had a red and green flag, it could have been, depending on the order and the shape and everything, confused for Belarus at a certain point. Which they do share certain parts of their culture and history and heritage with, obviously. Probably more with Poland than with Belarus, but you can't really separate them that much. And I'm guessing they wanted something that kind of did separate them a little bit.
When I was in Vilnius, I saw this other flag that was flying, and I asked our guide what it was, because I'd seen the Lithuanian national flag, I'd seen the flag of Vilnius, the capital, and she said it was a historic flag of Lithuania, and I believe it was red and had Gediminas on it. That's the emblem that I have on my Lithuania shot glass. I wish I knew more about the history of that flag. I don't know how often it was used, how long it was used, if it was actually used as the state flag prior to, the introduction of Russians before 1918. But I know that flag does exist, at least in an unofficial capacity.
Yeah, the one with the columns of Gediminas that you mentioned is it's older, and I think it originally was a military or like their army's flag or something like that. That then I guess kind of became, at least for a time, shorthand for the whole country. The one that I was looking up that is more what's thought of as the historical flag of Lithuania is this one that I just sent you in the chat, which is I think it's called like the Vytis flag, Vytis flag. And it's basically, I'll if you're a viewer, I'll have it up on the screen here, but it's a red field with a knight on a horse rampant, facing toward the hoist side with his sword raised, that kind of double cross that you generally associate with Lithuania and with like Eastern Orthodoxy, but they're the same length, the crosses they go across, I guess. And he's a white knight on a white horse with his sword raised, and he's kind of coming for the hoist side of that. And yeah, that one's really interesting to me. There are several reasons they didn't adopt that one as their flag when they gained independence. And it was funny to me because I think there were like 3 reasons given, but the third one out of the 3 was it's just hard to sew.
Like, it's a good enough reason as any.
Yeah, it's just not like conducive to, us actually making it. So we're just not going to do it.
If you can't mass produce it easily, what's the point?
Yeah, and I guess this triband triband is much easier for that. But yeah, I forget, I had it up here. This is definitely one that draws from the tricolor of the French flag, which you mentioned up top when you were talking about the Italian flag. But the French flag has given birth inadvertently to a lot of different national flags. Just like the triband kind of scheme on its own became iconic, and whether they wanted to do it horizontally, vertically, whatever, a lot of countries copied that and said, okay, what 3 colors can we use to represent ourselves? So in the Lithuanian flag, the 3 colors, the yellow, green, red, are colors that are traditionally used in folk weavings and traditional dress, which again, that green and red and the design on the Belarus flag could be said for that. But they obviously wanted to differentiate. I think the yellow is supposed to represent the rising sun. The red is the clouds lit up by the morning sun, and the green is fields and forest, which I'm not exactly sure that that's how those things work. Like, I don't know how the clouds that light up from the rising sun are below the fields and forests, but sure. I guess in this case they are.
An interesting note, I agree with your comparison of the red and the green for Lithuania to what we have now in Belarus, which, if you've heard me on any of the podcasts, I just despise that flag. I just think it's trash. If you look at the historic flag of Belarus, it's white, red, white. 3 horizontal stripes of white,
yes,
red, and white. And I actually have that flag, and I love that flag. And
I have that flag too.
When the latest election was happening several years ago, and there was all these protests against Lukashenko declaring his victory, you saw the white, red, white flag out in full force.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know if it was the red and the green monstrosity that was imposed on them when the Soviets, took over Belarus, if it originated then, or if there is some historical root there. I just don't know much about the Belarusian flag as far as its long history goes.
Yeah, I've done a deeper dive on that on my old podcast called In Chaos We Trust, if listeners want to look that up. Once Russia attacked Ukraine, I started doing a few special short episodes on just the history of that region writ large. And yes, that flag does come up. I own that flag as well. I really like it a lot. It is kind of like, if you want to picture the opposite of the Austrian flag, that's the easiest way I can describe it to someone who knows what the Austrian flag is. So instead of red, white, red. It's white, red, white. And there are variations that do have, I don't know if it's the same Vetus, the same like knight on it, but there are variations of that white, red, white that do have a crest in the middle with like a pointed like bottom end, flat top end that have a knight on horseback. And
that's the version that I have.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You have that one. I have the one without that. I would let's talk after.
All right.
I was going to say, I would love to get my hands on one with that on it. But yeah, that crest is like, it's very just like historically symbolic for that region, like, I guess, like writ large, and not that entire region, but like parts of Ukraine, Belarus, Lithuania, probably Poland, given everything else. That one is a very cool one. But I when they were looking at like a modern flag, I guess they had like modern eyes on it, and they were like, all right, like what are modern flags at this point in 1918 doing? They're mostly tricolors. They're mostly doing this kind of scheme, whatever. So let's do that. They actually originally proposed doing the exact flag they have now, but with the Vetus, the little knight on horseback in Canton, like in a red shield, in the yellow part up top left. And for whatever reason, I feel like this was kind of a case of like somebody intentionally like losing some notes, some design notes or something. But it seems like that was like widely voted on, and then somebody just like conveniently forgot to include that in their write-up of what was voted on. Because looking at the different sources here, which I've clicked through a lot, it's supposed to have that on it, but it just doesn't. And once they got to the final vote and everything, they were like, well, we like this one. It doesn't have that on it. Let's go with this one. So I don't know. There were a few people that weren't thrilled about it doesn't follow the rules of heraldry because that yellow is on top and then the green borders the red.
Yeah.
There were a few people pissed off about various things, but I don't know. I think it ended up all right. It's not my favorite by any means, but what are your thoughts on that one?
On Lithuania?
Yeah.
I actually like the flag. I know Dave hates it, and we go after each other all the time on Lithuania's flag. Part of it is bias because I've been there and I've experienced the culture and the people, and I've got a personal connection to it through people who live through a whole bunch of shit to be free. Sure. But I like that color combination as a whole. There are some flags with that color combination I don't like. This one is not offensive. I agree with you. In most cases, if you've got the red against the green, that's a no-no. You need to have a buffer between them, and that's typically a yellow or a white. But in this case, for me, it works, and I guess I'm a little biased with that. Yeah, I think it's a pretty flag. It's a pretty flag.
It's a pretty flag. It does remind. I think I had this as one of my fresh flags series that I'm doing on Instagram. That's like, I'll give you a flag that's still folded up, and you tell me what it is when I unfold it. And a lot of people guessed South American countries for that one.
I was gonna say they probably said Bolivia.
Various like African, like there was a few votes. I think only like 3 people actually got that one right, and it's because the colors are typically not found there, like in the Baltic or even like in Europe in general. So you wouldn't expect a Baltic or European country to have these colors on its flag, but it does. And that's Lithuania. The last one that I have for you, I will go ahead. Here we go. I'll go ahead and send to the chat now if I can re-find it.
All right, there it is.
And I believe you probably already, I probably didn't even have to send it. You probably knew what it was going to be, but yeah.
Yes, it is another horizontal triband. This one is a little different from the other two because there is symmetry involved with the colors. You have 3 stripes of carmine, white, and carmine. The central white stripe, though, is much more narrow than the upper and lower carmine stripes.
Damn, dude. Yeah, that was really good. Not a lot of guests break out carmine. Just say like, maroon or dark red or whatever.
It's a dark red.
It's a dark red. And yeah, Joey explained it perfectly. It is exactly that. It's a little bit longer. It's a 1-to-2 proportion flag, whereas the other ones I think are no, Lithuania's is 1-to-2 and Estonia's is 7-to-11. So sure, they're just hungry. Yeah, but this one was adopted 1921, which you may notice is 3 years later than the other two that we talked about, even though they all got independence around the same time. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. Latvia's kind of its own story in that it's also been wrapped in with other countries that weren't even Russia.
Yep.
But yeah, do you know anything about the story of this flag? The reason for the design.
The only thing I remember what I read about it is that it was very similar to what you see with Austria.
Yep.
Which has a very similar design of red, white, and red, but the stripes are all equal height. That basically, and I'm going to butcher the story here, so forgive me for anybody who truly knows this.
Oh, it's all good.
There were, tribes in the area, centuries ago that were battling. Their leader was injured. They thought he was going to die, but he didn't die, and he took off his, belt, and his blood-soaked tunic was, the red, white, where the belt was, and not bloody, and then red. And it was a miracle that he lived, and this is why they adopted that color and that pattern for that flag. I've heard the same about Austria. Again, I don't know how much of that's true and how much of that is just a nice story they wanted to tell to justify why they have that flag.
Yeah, I mean, I started this podcast with the Danish flag, which was supposed to have fallen from heaven. So, in
Estonia.
Yeah, actually, yeah, at Lindenice. Yeah, the Battle of Lindenice. Remember that. But, yeah, I mean, we can take liberties with I'm sure these folks took liberties with their flag designs and everything. But exactly what you said is right. Yeah, a Latgalian leader, old term for Latvians and Latvia, was injured in battle. And yeah, exactly like you said, the part where his body stayed white and the other parts were soaked red from his blood. It's the same story as Austria. It's a little bit different design and a little bit different red. This one's carmine after all. And, but other than that, it's a very similar story, legend, origin, whatever you want to call it. My thoughts on this one are, I remember growing up and seeing, actually, I don't remember growing up. It was a weird time. No, I remember growing up and seeing the thin blue line flag on people's front license plates, and not just of cops, but of bootlickers too. And I would think, from knowing vexillology even at a young age, I was like, that looks a lot like the flag of Latvia, because in my head I was like, it's a flag that has a very thin stripe in the middle. It's not the same, proportions as the other two, but it's blue and the top parts are black. And I kept telling myself, gosh, if Google ever exists, you better look this up. And years and years later, more years later than Google actually existed, I did look it up and I was like, oh, that's not a national flag. It's the flag of this. But it always reminded me of Latvia, I think, just because of the proportions. So, if you are one of those types or whatever, not one of those types, but if you know what the thin blue line flag looks like, imagine that, but with a deep maroon instead of the black and a thin white line, if you will, going across the middle, and you've pretty much got it.
What's interesting to me about this flag is if you look at it compared to the other Baltic countries, Estonia and Lithuania, at first glance, it's the least colorful. You might see it's the least striking because the colors are rather subdued. When you see it flying, especially if it's a significant size, it's so majestic. We were in Riga. Obviously, we took a trip to the Baltics. We were in Riga, and I was standing beside one of the main bridges that they have, and there was this gigantic flag flying on a cloudy day. And even on a cloudy day, just seeing it, gently going in the breeze, this monstrosity of a flag, it was just jaw-droppingly shocking. It was beautiful to see. It's amazing what seeing a flag flying, especially a large one, can do for your view of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because and I mean, I talked to Michael on my last episode, and he's he's obviously very interested in flags, but comes from a graphic design background and standpoint and everything. And so, he's of the opinion, and a lot of people are, and I'm not discounting this, but that, it should look as good on your computer screen or your phone or your tablet or whatever as it looks flying. But I don't think that many flags fit that narrative, because it's so much better seeing it flying. Like, I've even had I have a TikTok with, it's not got a ton of followers or anything, and it's mostly just me posting flags. But I posted, it was one of Michael's redesigns actually of the Washington State flag, and I didn't think too much of it, just seeing it on his website, like Flags for Good and everything else. And I was like, yeah, I'll take one. And then I got to flying it, and I was like, the computer screen and the phone do not do this one justice. And I think it's the same for the Latvian one, where you really need to see it flying, fluttering in the wind. You need to see it in all of its glory. I mean, that's what flags are intended to do. So why not? Wholeheartedly agree.
100%. Nothing you see on a computer screen, an emoji, a drawing is going to compare to seeing that flag flying. It will always be inferior to the actual flag flying. Because to your point, that's what it's designed to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, enough said, right? I
love seeing the three Baltic flags together when they're flying, or they designed a Euro that had the three flags on it to commemorate their independence, because they all had their independence at the same time. It's pretty cool seeing those color combinations together, because they complement each other very well.
Yeah, and since you said seeing all three of them flying together, I was looking up the national flag days of all three of these countries, and so I'm on Lithuania's right now, but they have, for the 16th of February, which as of recording is tomorrow. They have the day of reestablishment of the state of Lithuania from the Russian Empire in 1918, so that time. And they hoist it with the Latvian and Estonian flags. So it's not just Lithuania's flag day. I mean, it is, but they hoist it with the other two. The Baltics are so intertwined and interconnected that, and Estonia does the same thing. Weirdly, when I was looking at Latvia, it's not, I was able to find the least information about this, and I did try, but I can't find anything in Latvia's flag days that mandate the flying of Lithuanian and Estonian flags. But in Lithuania and Estonia, they both have flag days on, I think it's their individual Independence Days, which were days apart from each other. And yeah, so Latvia has it on the 16th, 24th of February, and then the 11th of March. And that one is for 1990, when they got out of the Soviet Union.
I was going to say, a lot of them have multiple Independence Days, one in 1918, the restoration of independence when the Soviet Union collapsed. So I know Latvia's, I believe it's the restoration of independence is May the 4th. So I like to say they have a Star Wars Day independence.
Yes. Damn. Nice. Yeah, I had to click over a tab, but yeah, you're right on with that one. Yeah.
I still keep in touch with our guide from Latvia when we were there. I'll ask her if there is any holiday where there is the mandating of the three flags being raised together.
I would be very curious to know that, and I would add it as kind of like a footnote or whatever to this episode, because yeah, like I said, Lithuania and Estonia, they both have 3 flag flying days in a row. The days aren't in a row, but of their flag flying days, 3 in a row that are hoisted with the other two. Whereas Latvia doesn't say that it has that, and from my Googling and searching, I couldn't find that they had that, but it may be the case. Flags of the World didn't say it in any case. But yeah, those are the flags of the Baltic countries. Anyway.
Did you know I had been to the Baltics?
I suspected you had been to the Baltics because of your Estonia shirt and a few things that you'd said on that pod. But I didn't know 400% sure. I actually did ask your pod mates. I was like, hey, what's Joey's heritage or whatever? is he, from one of the Baltics, or, is his family from one of the Baltics? And they were like, I think German. And I was like, well, close. I was like, close. There's Baltic Germans. There were anyway. I don't know how many still are, but
there are not a ton. But when I go to another country, rare as it is, and I try and say, pick up a couple of things in the native language, I was surprised that there were similarities between German and Latvian. I mean, they like our guide. I was talking about my aunt in Germany, and I referred to her as Tanta. She's like, what is that in German? I said, it means aunt. She's like, that's what it means in Latvian. I think ja is yes in German. It's yes in Latvian. So again, not everything is similar, but there are little things that are similar or even identical that I find very curious. So I always said if I was going to try and learn one of the languages, Latvian might be the easiest for me to pick up since I do have a little bit of a background in German. But I really want to learn Finnish, which is not obviously one of those languages. But
good freaking luck, man.
Yeah. Finnish frightens the absolute fuck out of me because
it should.
If you like get the dots in the wrong place, you go from, I went to church on Sunday to I fucked your cat. I mean, that's pretty much what it says. Part of my language for the listeners, but I mean, it can be that abrupt of a change just depending upon the punctuation and how you pronounce that punctuation.
Yeah. You don't got to apologize either. This is flagged for content for a reason. but yeah, no, it is wild. Like, Latvian is not a language that I know very much about, but it does make sense that it would have some borrowing, if that's kind of even what it is, from German, considering that like early Germans were like, like Baltic, like Prussians and everything, Königsberg, Kaliningrad, like that area. And then some, like, I don't know. It makes sense that there would be some inter kind of mingling of the languages because like you wouldn't expect Latvian to have da for yes, like Slavic languages overwhelmingly do, or all do, I guess. But I wouldn't expect it to have ya either.
Yeah, I didn't, and they did.
I don't know too much about Latvian, to be totally honest. I was a linguistics major in school, and I know probably more than, well, surely, hopefully, more than the layperson, or else I wasted a lot of money. But but yeah, not that much about like Latvian, not that much about Lithuanian, even really, to be honest. And Lithuanian probably has shades of Polish in it, but anyway.
Based on some of the characters I see over the letters and the way things are pronounced, I would probably tend to agree with you on that. And they did have the union of the Polish-Lithuanian. It wasn't an empire. I forget what they had called it.
Yeah.
What the political entity was.
Commonwealth, I think.
But just as an example, if you say thank you in Lithuania, it almost sounds like you're sneezing. It's ačiū.
Oh, really?
ACIU, I believe, and there's a little mark over one of the letters. It's ačiū.
And in Polish, it's dziękuję.
Oh.
I think. But I think that last part, the ye part, is like added on, or that might be like the u, or so like I could see like ačiū and dziękuję being similar. And then anyway, we're getting into a different podcast now that's about languages. No, it's fine. I love talking languages. I should start No, yeah, I definitely have the time for that. All right. So we've figured out the ins and outs of the Baltic flags. We've gone through our underrateds and our overrateds, and now it is time for a quiz. So, Joey, you said at the top of the show that your favorite flag, actually, I probably said it for you, was the Betsy Ross original American flag, the one with the 13 stars that are all specifically facing upwards instead of kind of pointed in toward the center as you go.
Yep.
So we are going to do a quiz on that flag.
Are you ready? Fail, but sure, bring it.
All right, and I think I've got music. I'm going to see how loud it comes up on my end. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. Question 1. How many stars are on that flag?
Oh, please, 13.
How many stripes on that flag?
13.
All right, smartass. What's 13 times 13?
Don't make me do math when I've been drinking.
It is. Do you want me to tell you?
Because I'm not doing math. I'm getting.
It is 169. All right, that's your first Eric. All right, true or false? The Betsy Ross flag was sewn by Betsy Ross.
I think that's more of a legend than anything else, so I'm going to say it's false.
That is false. How many points did the Stars, as originally planned, have?
I want to say 6.
Bing, bing, bing. It was 6. In what year was the first of the 3 flag acts passed? The one that kind of relates to this.
Fuck, I have no idea. 1776. I don't know.
1777.
Okay.
Which U.S. department features this flag on its seal?
Huh. I didn't know that there was one.
Me neither, till I look this up.
Interior.
It is Veterans Affairs. Because it is veterans from then to now.
You think I would know that? Because
I would think you would know that.
But I did not. I didn't know that they had the Roman seal.
Yeah, it's not a commonly used one. But anyway, next question. Which major sports team uses the 13 stars in a circle on its logo?
That would be the 76ers.
Bam! Nice. Didn't know you were going to get that one. What two
I live outside of Philadelphia. I should know that.
I know, yeah, but I didn't know it. Anyway, it's beside the point. What two state flags feature the 13-star circle as a nod to the Betsy Ross flag?
2 state flags. Most of them are so ugly I don't even look at them.
And you're correct to do so.
Well, it's none of the ones that I really like.
Correct. That's not the whole answer, but that is correct.
No, because 2 flags have 13 stars as a nod to the Betsy Ross flag?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Your time is running out.
It's going to run out because I don't know.
Good. I don't actually have a timer. It is Rhode Island and Indiana. And now Indiana, you could argue, but apparently that was the intent.
Doesn't Indiana have like a sparkler?
It has more than 13.
It's got more than 13.
It has more than 13, but it does have 13 forming a circle around the edge.
Oh, Indiana's full of shit.
Agreed, for a ton of reasons.
Also,
Also,
Rhode Island
hey,
I can give a pass to.
yeah.
Although their flag is ugly.
All right, these are tangential, these last 3, but how many versions of the U.S. flag have there been? And this is multiple choice.
Grief.
Is it A, 27, B, 23, or C, 37?
Way too many, I will say A.
It was A, 27. Not one for like every, 47, 48, 49, you get it.
Yeah.
Betsy Ross, what was her profession?
Prostitute.
Not what was the oldest profession. What was Betsy Ross's profession?
She was a seamstress.
She was not. She was an upholsterer, which apparently, anyway, at the time held a distinction. I don't think there's a huge distinction, but you know what? No, I'm going to give that one to you. Fuck it.
Thank you.
And this last one, she was one of how many children? Like, how many kids did her parents have?
Yeah, I know. I got the question. Only child.
One of 17.
Oh, good God.
You want to guess what order? Or what, where she was?
Youngest?
She was the 8th.
8.
Jesus, Joe. I thought you knew this flag, dude.
What the hell does that have to do with the flag? I don't care what order she came out in.
It's also funny to me because I and the listeners can hear that I cut the music there at a funny point, but you didn't hear it the entire time, so it's like, whatever. Anyway, yeah, no, it's very important that you know what order she was in her family, and as such, I don't know. What can I give you on that? Let's see. You got, you know what? A-. I'm calling it now. It's an A-.
I'll take it.
You done good.
I'll take
You did well.
I knew my Baltics.
You knew your Baltics. You were correct with your overrated flag. And honestly correct with your underrated. And And yeah, I think that's pretty much our time for today. So let's go into plugs. Joey, where can people find you, follow you, all that good stuff online?
Oh, I am on Instagram as Joey B, the flag guy, with a whole bunch of underscores thrown in there because that is the only combination of a name I could find that would actually work when I signed up for Instagram. So there you have it. If you follow me, you're going to see a lot of pictures of flags or videos of flags. You're going to see a lot of pictures of beer that I drink and a lot of stuff to do with 80s music. So just be warned ahead of time. Joe Billips on Facebook, and occasionally you will see me on Flag Session on their YouTube page as part of what I call a K2BY, or a Kiwi, two Brits, and a Yank Talk Flags.
Perfect. Yeah, so go follow Joey in all those places. He is a great follow on any of them. I've been following him on Instagram. He just did a for the listeners. I've been following him on Instagram for honestly, like about from the time I started the show. You were like one of the first people that popped up as suggestions to follow.
You may know.
So that's got to mean something. Yeah. And yeah, great follow on Instagram. Always flying different flags outside his place. You can talk to him about barbecue for hours, or at least I can.
Yes, you can.
And yeah, and then as far as places to find us, I suspect if you've made it this far in the episode, you mostly know them. But if you go to flagged.rocks, that is our link tree where you can find most of our social media, where to listen to the show, everything else like that. I usually have the newest version of the YouTube episode up there, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to find us individually without going there, just search for @flagged4 content on all social media except for YouTube, where it is spelled out @flagged4 FOR content. And I think that's pretty much it. And then, so I feel like, I was going to close out the show, but I didn't. I have lost my notes on how to close the show out. Joey, is there anything you can do to help?
Well, I can give your listeners and your viewers the same advice I gave to my cat, Thomas, when I was recording my video for Tariff, and that is don't eat the flags.
You heard it here first, folks. Don't eat the flags. We have been Flagged for Content, and I will see y'all in a couple weeks. Thanks, Vex Heads.
Take care.
Flagged for Content is a Flags for Good podcast. Go to flagsforgood.com for more info.